Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ep.4, Season 1 of the Capitalist Lifestyle Show. I am your host, Luke, and I've got another exciting episode for you here on the Capitalist Lifestyle Show, the show where we discuss how to capitalize on your time here on this earth and do it in style. That was really bad. I just came up with that off the top of my head. Let me try that again. Here, let me try a different one. The show where we discuss how to capitalize on your time here on Earth as a matter of course. Actually, I kind of like that one. It's a double entendre. As a matter of course, and as a matter of course. Anyways, moving on. Got a good show for you this week, but before I continue, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Zero Gravity Med. Come visit us at www.zero-gravity-media.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud, all under the name Zero Gravity Media. Let's get into it. So this week I am covering a topic. I'm going to call it framing philosophy. I'm not entirely sure that's the correct way to name it, but whatever, it's close enough. I'm covering some of these more deep, fundamental topics kind of here at the outset of the show as a basis. I'm trying to lay some groundwork. Maybe later I can start hitting lighter topics, more concrete topics. But right now, here in the beginning, I want to just lay some groundwork and hit some fundamental things about how to think about life and really philosophy. And this can therefore afterwards serve as a repository that you can always go back to. Anybody listening to a show later can go back to. And, Russ and I have talked in previous shows and of HSP, and I've talked in previous shows about this, about, the different branches of philosophy and how to think about that. And we've kind of touched on it a little bit. And what I'm going to do this episode is I'm going to try to definitively lay this out for you so that you can understand philosophy, the subject of philosophy and its constituent components. And I'm going to do that through an analogy. And I hope that after this episode, you'll have a much clearer understanding of the application of philosophy to your life and how fundamentally important it is. It's important to everything. It's relevant to everything. It is omnipresent. It is inescapable. You cannot escape the subject of philosophy. It is inescapable. And if you are not consciously aware of philosophy or of your own personal understanding, your own personal philosophy, you are a sponge, necessarily. A sponge to everybody's ideas around you. So this episode will hopefully lay some groundwork and sort of put it into perspective, and hopefully this analogy will allow you to kind of understand the subject of philosophy a little bit more fundamentally. So let's jump into it. So we're going to begin with an analogy, and the analogy is going to be a computer. And the reason I chose a computer is because it really just works fundamentally the same way a human mind does, human body, really. So let's first lay out the 5 branches of philosophy. I'm really only going to be talking about 3 of them today in this analogy. I could probably tease the analogy out or stretch it out to apply to the most derivative 2 branches, but I think that would be a little painful to do that. So I'm probably just going to leave those out. So philosophy, the philosophy generally understood, breaks down into 5 branches. They are metaphysics, epistemology, morality, politics, and aesthetics, or art is the last one. Metaphysics being the nature of existence, reality. Is there one reality or are there 2? Epistemology being the branch of philosophy which deals with knowledge, logic, reason, rationality. How do you know something? How do you know that you know something? What is proof? What is inductive reasoning? What is deductive reasoning? What is abstraction? All of this is epistemology. The next branch is morality, as how or why should one act. And then the two most derivative branches of philosophy are politics, which is how do we as human beings organize ourselves socially, and finally art. Art being the branch of aesthetics, or in other words, philosophy or values concretized. So why a computer? Well, because a computer contains all the same constituent components that makes up a philosophical framework. So let's start with, first of all, okay, we'll do this in the same order. Okay, you've got the environment around the computer, then you've got the physical computer itself, then you've got the and all that entails, the hardware, everything, the mouse, the keyboard, all of that. Then you've got the software inside of the computer that stores data, that controls data flows, things like this, controls the behavior of the software. And we're going to just leave it at that. So we'll start with metaphysics, the nature of existence, the nature of reality. As this is analogous to a computer, it would be the environment which surrounds the computer. And I'll expand on this in the next point. And actually, I should say part of that reality is the physical computer itself, which we'll sort of call your physical body as well. So you've got the environment around the computer, then you have the physical computer itself, the hardware components and everything else, and this is the physical machine itself. The question is how does a computer perceive the reality? How does a computer interact with its environment, with its physical reality? Well, it's got a keyboard, it's got a mouse, it's got a camera, it's got microphone, it's got all of these things through which it can receive sensory data. And that exactly aligns, is perfectly analogous to we human beings also have apparatuses through which we receive sensory data. We have eyes to receive visual data. We have ears to receive audio data, to sense sound waves and process those. We've got, our skin. We're able to feel. We can smell. These are our senses. This is how we receive sensory data. And just like we receive sensory data through our apparatuses, each one of our apparatuses having a particular form, a particular way in which it perceives the outside world, so too, a computer has apparatuses, each with a different form through which it perceives the outside world. And we actually create these all the time for new physical sensors. We create FLIR, forward-looking infrared. So like, the movie Predator, where the Predator, he can actually see in infrared. That is a particular form in which that creature, this fictional creature, can perceive reality. And we manufactured the technology to do the same thing. Even though we can't naturally do it, we manufactured a way to do it. And this is all over the place, everywhere. Your car has the computer inside your car has many, many different ways in which it perceives its environment. So this could be air pressure indicators inside of your tires. When your pressure gets low, what happens is this physical sensor, it fires a signal to what's called a PLC. I'm not going to go into the weeds here, but a PLC, a programmable logic controller, and then that takes that analog data, turns it into digital data, sends it to an OPC server. The OPC server sends it to a different server, which then runs logic on it, and then a little light in your dash turns on that says your front right tire is low on air pressure. So there's this whole link, this whole chain, but it starts with sensory perception of the outside world. Okay. So just like we have ways in which we perceive reality, so too computers have ways in which they perceive reality. So what happens after reality is perceived? Well, something has to happen there. And on a computer, that sensory data gets turned into what's called binary code, which is zeros and ones. And that is, for human beings, analogous to perception. So you sense it, and now you are perceiving something. Now, you haven't, this is not conceptual yet, but you are perceiving it. Animals exist in the perceptual state constantly. So animals basically are running around just seeing binary code, and that's it everywhere. They can kind of remember things, but humans are the only beings that are able then to abstract on that. So then that moves us into, and by the way, sensory perception, that is the basis of epistemology, the basis of knowledge, is sensing it, perceiving it, and then we depart from the rest of the animal kingdom in the sense that we are then able to abstract on that binary code. We can group together ones and zeros, and we can form letters out of it. And then we can take groups of those letters and abstract further and create words out of that identify some referent in reality. And in the case of computers, we quite literally use literally use Aristotle's laws of logic, and then we run logic. This is called back-end software. Okay. So we abstract on the binary code, grouping together ones and zeros, forming letters, forming words, and then we run logic on that. And it all ties back to something that exists in reality that was perceived. So you can see how this is now bridging the gap between reality and knowledge, which took a long time, a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, and it took me like a couple of years before I really began to understand this, that your knowledge comes from things which you have sensed, perceived, and conceptualized, which derives from reality. And as you see things, you can also remember it. So going back to what I was saying, like the computer is kind of like your physical body. Well, so too, computers have databases. They've got a hard disk space. The hard drive on a computer would be like your long-term memory. The better long-term memory you have, that's analogous to the better hard drive on a computer. Computer also, that's ROM memory. Computer has RAM memory, random access memory, which is what we would call short-term memory. Somebody who has Alzheimer's has a short-term memory, but no long-term memory. Somebody who has, and it's slowly going away until they just wither away. And then they don't have any memory of anything at all. They can't even remember how to eat. And let's see, somebody who has amnesia has, it could be short-term or long-term or both. Your brain could be analogous to the CPU in your computer. How fast can it process data? Ben Shapiro's got like a, 8-core overclocked processor going on upstairs. So it neatly aligns. All of these things do with the human body. And when you store that data, you're receiving new perceptual data. What you are doing is essentially running back-end logic on that, storing things that are essential, discarding things that aren't essential. Now, human beings, unlike computers, we can't just store everything. Somebody who has a photographic memory sort of has like an infinitely large hard drive. And they just remember everything. But, vast majority of human beings can't do that. So, our brain has evolved in such a way that we discard non-essential information and we keep the information that's important to us, and that's an automatized process. So, you can, and we learn quickly, very quickly. I was listening to a podcast one time of somebody creating a guy that was doing like machine learning for automated driving, and he was like, people don't realize how powerful the human mind is and its ability to process new information on the fly. And that is our evolutionary tool in nature. So, we don't necessarily, we can't calculate infinite numbers because it's just not a very useful thing to have, except in certain contexts. And so we just created a machine to do that for us. So I hope you can see how powerful the human mind really is. So going back to our analogy here with reference to the computer, after we've abstracted on that, so we've got this sensory data coming in, then we've got binary code, which is perception. Then we start to conceptualize that into abstracted concepts, groups of ones and zeros, which represent letters, bringing the letters together and abstracting those to bring together words. And then we use words to logically understand the world. And that's what we do. And this is the foundation of knowledge. This is what perceiving reality around you and then thinking actually is. And again, this is epistemology. This is the basis of epistemology. And then so what happens after that? Well, in the case of a computer, it has to deliver this information to what we call the front end, which is now, okay, you've got the values, you've got the data, you've ran logic on it, you understand it, but now you have to do something with it. So in the software world, this is what you would call front end software, which then it takes that into an even higher level of abstraction so as to form actions and behaviors on it. And this is, here we have it, morality. So you're taking the data that you are receiving from reality, discarding the non-essential data, forming abstractions through logic, through reason, so as to determine a course of action. Software works the exact same way. The way software is built, it's identical. There's no difference. Now, I should walk that back a little bit. There's a slight difference in the sense that we have emotions, right? So this is why, this is what separates us from computers, is that we have emotions. We can feel certain things about it. Even in the sense that we create a quote unquote thinking and feeling machine, it's not really thinking and feeling because we've told it what to think and how to feel about it. So, and how to think about it. We've given it the data to think about, the ways to understand that, what to think about it, and then how to feel about it. So even if you create a quote unquote thinking, feeling machine, you've still programmed it to think and feel that way. So this is why I'm not ever worried about AI or anything like this. It can't just become sentient because we are its creators and therefore controllers. But not to go off on a huge tangent there. So yeah, the front end is then morality. So then when you see on the computer screen, that is what, everything that happened behind the scenes, under the hood, so to speak, everything that you saw, that you see on your computer screen is a process of perception, logic, reason, abstraction, and behavior. And we human beings, what appear when you're, on your deathbed, then what's going to be on your computer screen? What's going to appear there? It's for you to determine. And everything that goes on under the hood, in your brain, in your mind, at the end of your life, when you're on your deathbed, it was everything that was under the hood. That will be what is up on your computer screen at the end of your life. So you need to ask yourself, what do you want to be looking at the end of that? Now, let me hit a couple of things here on this. So another reason why I really enjoyed this computer analogy is because there's lots of vocabulary that reflects what we deal with. And so, for example, bugs, software that has bad logic that doesn't work, and you have a bug, a button that you can't press, or something appears in the wrong place, something like this. Yeah, we have that too. Hey, I can think of one good bug. If you are a listener of HSP, you're probably already thinking of it. Socialism. That is a bug. That is a political process. Now, I said I wasn't going to get into the politics and aesthetics, but hey, I just can't help myself sometimes. It's too easy. But socialism is a bug in people's heads. They came to that conclusion erroneously through bad thought processes. Right? Their thought processes, and this is why philosophy is so important. This is why I talk about it. A lot of times I'm not too interested on the politics because, you could be arguing, going back to this computer screen, you could be looking at the computer screen arguing about this button's right there and it should be 2 pixels lower. When the real question is, should that button even be there? Is that the right button to have? Does it say the right thing? What is the functionality? Does it do the right thing? Is there a better way to do it? And again, should it even be there? Is it even right to have that button there at all? And so I'm a lot of times I'm not going to argue about the minutia of whether the button's 2 pixels high or 2 pixels low, when fundamentally deep down in that deep machine code, all the way one level abstracted from binary, there's a logical error there. So I'm always, when it comes to political things, I'm always diving really deep into it, trying to find where did they go wrong and how deep do I have to go to find it. I was reading about Hegel, actually, and if you really want to get down to the philosophical roots of democratic socialism, it is Hegelian social primacy of consciousness, which is just the idea that there's primacy of consciousness, which is that consciousness takes precedent over reality, that we can control reality just based upon what we think as if it's magic, and then introducing a social aspect of it. So it's what we socially think controls reality. It's not enough that one person think it. No. Everybody needs to think it. And if everybody thinks it, then that's what reality is. And so I realized later, I was like, oh my God, like this is the roots of democratic socialism. It's Hegelian social primacy of consciousness. So I'm always diving deep into philosophy to figure out where this stuff comes from. Because if you argue over the minutia of how are we going to pay for it, who cares? You're just agreeing with it out of hand when in reality there's some deep philosophical flaw you have to unearth. You have to uncover. You have to fix the bug that's deep down in the software. And you have to go searching for that. You have to find it. And it's difficult, Anybody who's a software developer knows that. You can't just, this is called debugging, So we have to debug, where did we go wrong? We have to debug our political system and figure out what went wrong. And then we have to go attack that and we have to fix it. So this is a lot of times on HSP when I'm looking to go deeper into philosophy. This is the reason why, is because I'm looking into, I'm looking into the deeper elements of philosophy there to try and really find the root core answer and what really went wrong. And one other thing that I'll mention really quick. I'm at 23 minutes, so coming in under the 30-minute mark. That's good. There's one other thing I wanted to mention. This process of abstraction is important to talk about because, you take a piece of software and let's say you've got 6 different pages, right? You've got like a login page, a log out page, a help page, a contact page, a user profile page, and I don't know, maybe it's an e-commerce site, so there's a shopping cart page, right? And you've got the same button on all 6 or 7 different pages. Well, at a certain point, you go, oh, I've got the same functionality doing the same thing 6 times in 6 different places. Okay, I'm going to abstract that out into some central place somewhere else and then just reference that in all these other places. And that's called induction. And then in the future, you can deductively apply that to an infinite number of times. So instead of having to implement it a 7th time, an 8th time, a 9th time, a 10th time, and then when you need to change something having to do with it, then you've got to change it 10 different times. Well, you just abstract it out into one other place, and then you just change it once and it updates all 10, 12 different instances. And then as your site grows, or in the case of us human beings, as our knowledge base grows and we experience more of the world, you can apply that to an infinite number of scenarios. What is this called? That is called a principle. This is what a principle is. It is something that you have learned about reality so much that you are able to abstract it into a principle and then apply it infinitely in other contexts. But you have to identify what is essential about that context, that upon which that you can form that principle. And then that allows, and it's powerful. This is why the human mind is powerful, because we are constantly abstracting knowledge upon knowledge upon knowledge and applying it in all these different contexts. The human mind is a very, very, very powerful tool. And this is, and you take this, right? And let's combine the two, this democratic socialism example of a bug mixed with an abstracted principle. When you think of a principle, when you think of I should say a concept at this point. So not just a principle, but a concept. When you think of a concept, you should have a flood of concretes rushing into your mind. Leonard Peikoff puts it that way, a flood of concretes. So we all know what, and I keep using political examples because it's really easy to understand. Anybody who's with us on HSP thinks of socialism, a flood of concretes comes to mind. Authoritarianism, totalitarianism, infringement upon individual rights, such as right to own property, freedom of speech, all of these things. Okay, these are all the concretes that in your mind define what socialism is. And where did you find that? Well, you derive it from the facts of reality. You look at history, you look at other societies, you look at what happened in Sweden from 1870 to 1850 to 1950, when they were, when they went from one of the poorest countries in Central and Western Europe to, over the course of 100 years, becoming one of, if not the richest country in Central Western Europe. And then they implemented socialism, and within 40 years, they had hyperinflation, and they went bankrupt in the 90s, and they've been privatizing ever since. These are the concretes that flood my mind when I think of socialism. I think of devastation, poverty, that it has wrought across countries, time and time again. Everywhere it's been tried in different demographics. It's been tried in different geographic areas. So it has little to do with resources. It has little to do with ethnic populations. You look at North Korea versus South Korea, it's the same demographic, the same people, disastrous results on one side, and then the other side you have much more freedom, and you've seen the dark and versus the light pictures in North and South Korea. So you've got all these different contexts, and you can compare all these things, and when you think of socialism, a flood of concretes rushes to your mind, and that's what it is to you. And it is the essentials of what it is that rushes to your mind in reference to observed reality. Okay? Somebody who thinks of socialism in their flood of concretes is children with gumdrop smiles and rivers of chocolate, and families laying out on grassy hills and picnics and things. That's a bug. They did not derive that from reality. They got that from a professor. They got that from a textbook. That was wrong. They got that from propaganda. They got that from internet forums. They have a fundamentally flawed way of processing the world around them. And that is a bug that they have to work out. So your job when you're thinking about how to perceive the world around you is to ensure that your thought processes and the essentials that you store into your hard drive are consistent with the facts of reality. And if they aren't, you have a bug and you need to fix it. That's it for episode 4 of the Capitalist Lifestyle Show. Again, I'm your host, Luke. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Zero Gravity Med. Come visit us at zero-gravity-media.com if you want to ask me a question. Append to that with /contact. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud. I hope you enjoyed this episode, dear listener. Getting some of these more foundational fundamentals, conversations, laying some groundwork here. I look forward in future episodes, maybe a little bit lighter topics, a little bit easier to digest, perhaps. Although I'm trying my hardest to make these topics palatable and easily digestible. So I hope I'm doing a good job of that. I would appreciate it if people maybe left me a little bit of feedback and let me know if I am doing a good job of that. And till next time, Russ and I are recording HSP this weekend, which we are very much looking forward to. Until next time, dear listener, take care.